Level 1. The offer. It begins on a wooden dock in coastal Ecuador, where a stranger knows your name, your debts, and exactly what your boat handling is worth to the cocaine trade. A quick note before we go further. This video is for education only. It explains how these investigations actually work and where they end, not how to do any of it. The whole point is the consequences. This is how the United States Coast Guard hunts maritime drug smugglers, from coastal pangas to narco submarines in the Eastern Pacific, and this is what happens when they finally find you. You are a fisherman with an empty net and a full ledger of debt. The catches have collapsed, the fuel costs more every month, and your daughter needs school fees. Your father fished these waters, and his father before him. The sea always paid enough, until the big trawlers and the warming currents came. Now the sea pays in a different currency. First offer. $5,000 one night of work. The man in the clean shirt offers $5,000 for one night of driving a boat. That is more than your nets have earned you in an entire year. He never says the word cocaine. He talks about packages, about points on a GPS, about men who respect a captain who knows these waters better than anyone alive. The traffickers recruit fishermen for one simple reason. You can read the currents, fix a dying engine at sea, and survive weather that would kill a city man in an hour. What looks like easy night work is really a federal conspiracy. From the outside, the offer looks like easy money for honest skills nobody else will pay for. In the eyes of American federal law, it is step one of an international drug conspiracy. You tell yourself it is one run, one payment, one debt wiped clean. Every man in this story once told himself exactly the same sentence, and like them, you say yes. 2,000 miles away in Key West, Florida, an agency called Joint Interagency Task Force South tracks smuggling routes across 2 oceans from a room that never goes dark. JIATF, South Watch Area. 6 million square miles of ocean. Their watch area covers roughly 6 million square miles of ocean, the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific combined. Somewhere inside that impossible blue space is one small wooden boat. Yours. They already know your village, because boats from your coastline keep appearing on their intercept maps. You have not left the dock yet, and you are already part of a pattern. Level 2. The supply run. Your first job is not drugs at all. It is fuel drums, food, and spare parts, ferried out at night to coordinates where the real smuggling boats refuel in open water. You load blue fuel drums into a panga at 2 in the morning. No moon, no running lights, just an outboard engine and a handheld GPS wrapped in a plastic bag. This is the invisible layer of the cocaine trade. For every load crossing the Pacific toward the United States, a chain of small boats keeps it fueled, fed, and moving north. You are not carrying a single gram tonight, and that is deliberate. The cartel tests every new man on supply runs before it trusts him with product worth more than his village. The Ecuadorian Navy patrols these same waters, and it does not work alone. American advisors, shared radar pictures, and formal agreements let the United States Coast Guard reach far south of its own coastline. Under those bilateral agreements, dozens of coastal nations let American boarding teams stop and search vessels flying their flags. Out on the water, borders bend in Washington's favor, and every smuggler knows it. What you do not know is that captured crews talk. Every debrief aboard every cutter maps another refueling point, and 3 of the waypoints in your plastic-wrapped GPS are already compromised. One night, a patrol boat spotlight sweeps the water 200 meters off your bow. You kill the engine, lie flat between the fuel drums, and learn what your own heartbeat sounds like. Supply run pay, $10,000 per week-long run. The runs get longer and the envelopes get thicker. $10,000 now for a single week of work. The recruiter tells you the bosses up the chain have noticed your steady hands. Then comes the real offer. A seat on a go-fast boat, open ocean, product aboard, triple the money, and a very different kind of consequence if the Americans ever catch you. An older fisherman pulls you aside at the dock. He lists names, quietly, of local men who took that seat. Some are in Florida prisons. Some never came back at all. You do the math with a pencil stub on the back of a fuel receipt. 3 more years of debt or 3 runs to freedom. Once again, you choose the water. Level 3. The Go Fast. A Go Fast boat is a 30-foot open hull with 900 horsepower bolted to the stern, built for exactly one purpose. Outrun everything on the water between Colombia and the drop point. In a mangrove estuary before dawn, men pass bales down a human chain, each one wrapped in plastic and packed hard as concrete. You stack them like firewood beneath your feet. 1,200 kilos of cocaine ride under the deck boards, worth about $30 million on American streets. Your promised share for moving it is $30,000 if you survive the trip. There are 4 of you aboard, a driver, a mechanic, a navigator, and you, the new man. Nobody uses real names and nobody talks about what happens to crews that fail. The route runs deep into the eastern Pacific, hundreds of miles offshore, swinging wide past the Galapagos Islands before turning north toward Central America. 10 days on open water, maybe more. You run at night with the lights off and drift by day under blue tarps, painted the exact color of deep ocean. From a mile away, you are nothing at all. What looks like empty open ocean is really a watched corridor. You believe you are hiding in the largest empty space on Earth, but this stretch of Pacific is not empty. It is one of the most watched corridors on the entire planet. Every known smuggling track, every past interdiction, every informant tip feeds one database in Key West. The analysts never search the whole ocean. They search the narrow lane you are most likely using. And the leak started before you ever left. The Drug Enforcement Administration pays sources in every port along this coastline, and somebody watched your bales go into that estuary 2 nights ago. You are being hunted by a coalition you cannot see. Agency layered on agency from the dock you left to the horizon ahead. Each one quietly hands your file to the next. On day 4, you allow yourself one comfortable thought. Maybe the stories are exaggerated. Maybe the ocean really is too big to police. The sea stays silent and lets you believe it. 8 miles above the water, a radar operator circles a small return on her screen. Wooden hull, no transponder. Wrong place, wrong heading. She types 3 quiet words. Target of interest, level 4. The eyes above. The first hunter you will never see flies through clouds you cannot reach. A maritime patrol aircraft sweeping the ocean with radar while you count fuel drums and watch the horizon. It might be a Coast Guard, HC-130 Hercules, or a Customs and Border Protection P-3 Orion. Long wings, longer hours, and sensor operators who read the surface of the sea like text. Their surface radar catches the hard, flat glint of your outboard engines. Their infrared camera sees the heat plume of your exhaust glowing against cold water. At night, from miles out. 1 patrol flight, 12 hours airborne per sortie. A single patrol flight can stay airborne for around 12 hours and sweep tens of thousands of square miles of open ocean. Your 40 knots of top speed mean nothing against that geometry. The aircraft never descends and never crosses your horizon. Doctrine says stay invisible, hold the track, and let the target relax into confidence. Right now, 200 miles out, you feel completely safe. In Key West, your radar track flows onto a wall of screens at Joint Interagency Task Force South, where military officers and drug agents from a dozen nations watch it crawl north. Everything above you is ranked and layered. Satellites flag anomalies, aircraft confirm them, and surface ships close the trap. You are at the bottom of that stack in a plastic boat. Intercept forecast, 18 hours until you cross their line. An operations officer measures your course and speed, then draws a line on the chart to the exact patch of ocean where you will be tomorrow. A ship is already steaming toward it. Halfway to the drop point, the driver grins for the first time all week and passes a bottle around. 6 days, nothing but water. You are certain now that nothing has seen you. That confidence is part of the design. Interdiction doctrine prefers to take smugglers far from land, when they are exhausted, low on fuel, and carrying the entire load aboard as perfect evidence. The plane that found you hands your track to the next aircraft, shift after shift after shift, so the picture never blinks. By now, you have been watched continuously for 2 full days. Ahead of your bow, the empty horizon is no longer actually empty. Something gray and very patient has been steaming through the night to stand exactly where your GPS line ends. Level 5, the cutter. Waiting just over that horizon is a Legend-class national security cutter, the largest hunting ship the United States Coast Guard owns, and its crew has done this hundreds of times before. The cutters carry names like James and Bertholf, white hulls with a racing stripe that look almost friendly in port. Out here, they are the apex predator of this entire ocean. National security cutter, 418 feet of white steel. A national security cutter is longer than a football field, stays at sea for months at a time, and carries helicopters, drones, and fast pursuit boats inside its hull. You have 2 outboards. The cutter does not chase you across the ocean. It reads the forecast of your own behavior and simply parks in your future, engines quiet, radar reaching out past the curve of the Earth. Long before you could ever see the ship, it launches 2 over-the-horizon pursuit boats, low black hulls with armed boarding teams aboard, vectored onto your position by the aircraft you never noticed. Below deck, a boarding officer checks her pistol, radio, and evidence kit while a translator rehearses commands in Spanish. They have run this exact morning routine for years. You are today's appointment. Up on the bridge, the captain watches your radar blip crawl toward the intercept point and checks the fuel numbers twice. Patience is a weapon. The Coast Guard owns more of it than you. Your only sensors are 4 pairs of exhausted eyes and a cheap handheld radio. The navigator scans a horizon he has trusted his whole life, and the trap waits politely just beyond it. By dusk, the geometry is finished. Aircraft above you, a cutter astride your course, pursuit boats sliding onto both flanks. The only open direction on the chart leads back toward empty fuel tanks. Night falls, and the driver pushes the throttles forward, racing toward a coastline still 600 miles away. You are doing 40 knots in the dark, straight into the middle of the arrangement. Then the ocean turns white, a searchlight pins your boat, a loud hailer crackles across the water in Spanish, and the words are brutally simple. United States Coast Guard, stop your vessel, now. The driver does not stop. He carves the boat hard around and runs because the load is worth $30 million and his family lives 3 streets from the men who own it. Level 6. The helicopter snipers. Every runner believes no ship afloat can catch a go-fast boat, and every runner is right, which is exactly why the Coast Guard stopped sending ships and started sending snipers and helicopters. An MH-65 Dolphin helicopter lifts off the cutter's flight deck, folds into the darkness, and closes on your glowing wake at over 160 knots. There is no outrunning this. The crew belongs to Hitron, the helicopter interdiction tactical squadron based in Jacksonville, Florida. Their specialty is precision fire that stops boats instead of people, and they very rarely miss. Hitron established. 1998, Jacksonville, Florida. The squadron has been perfecting this single maneuver since its first trials in 1998. In that time, airborne marksmen have helped stop hundreds of smuggling boats, almost without loss of life. Behind you, the mechanic starts heaving bales over the side, $30 million breaking apart in the wake because cargo in the water is deniable and cargo aboard is a life sentence. The helicopter draws level with your bow, and a marksman leans out with a rifle. First come warning shots, tracer rounds stitched across the water ahead of you. The message needs no translation. The driver keeps running anyway, so the marksman shifts his aim and puts rounds through your outboard engines, one after another, until the boat coughs, slews sideways, and dies in the swell. Silence, smoke, and rotor wash. 4 men raise their hands in a drifting hull, while the pursuit boats close in from both sides. Nobody on either side has been shot. This is by design. A boarding team climbs aboard with rifles slung, more bored than triumphant. They swab the deck for cocaine residue, bag your GPS, and note 4 dehydrated men who will not meet their eyes. Behind you, the cutter's small boats are already scooping bales out of the sea. Everything that floats is photographed, field-tested, and logged. The evidence you dumped becomes the case file against you. But this time, the currents win. Most of the load scatters and sinks. The boarding team finds a stripped and empty hull, and without evidence, you are photographed, fingerprinted, and handed to Ecuador. You go home alive and free, and for a week you almost believe it. Then the recruiter visits. The bosses lost $30 million on your watch, and lost loads are billed, not forgiven. Level 7. The NARCO submarine. There is only one way a broke fisherman repays a debt the size of a cocaine load, and it is being welded together in a jungle shipyard. They call it a narco submarine. Far up a river in Colombia, hidden under the tree canopy, workers build semi-submersibles out of fiberglass and salvaged diesel engines. Gray hulls riding barely above the waterline, nearly invisible to any passing eye. One semi-submersible, $1 million build cost, single use. The cartel spends about $1 million building a vessel it fully expects to use exactly once and then sink. Against the value of the cargo inside, the boat itself is a rounding error. Inside is a fiberglass coffin, 4 bunks, a diesel engine, and air that tastes like fuel. No toilet, no shower, no way out except the single hatch above the pilot's seat. The mathematics explain why you are here. 1 disposable boat, 1 desperate crew, tons of cocaine, and a payout that erases your debt. All you must do is breathe diesel fumes for 10 days. You climb down, the hatch seals, and the daylight shrinks to a porthole. The hull sits so low that waves wash straight over it. From above, you are a shadow on the water. The heat climbs past 40 degrees, the diesel hammers day and night, and the man beside you vomits into a bucket for a week. Sailors call these vessels floating coffins for good reason. The pilot has survived one previous trip, which makes him the veteran aboard. He steers by compass and a taped-up GPS, watching the ocean through a single fogged porthole. Nobody speaks for hours. Day 6. You are 200 miles offshore, packed in with the cocaine, certain that nothing can see a hull this low. Above the clouds, a patrol plane has already called in your position. Every hull you have ever crewed sits somewhere on a Coast Guard threat ladder, and the semi-submersible sits at the very top. The harder you are to see, the harder they look for you, because a hull can hide, but a wake cannot. Your diesel drags a long white scar across a dark ocean, and modern maritime radar was built to notice exactly that kind of scar. In Key West, an analyst matches the new track to a familiar departure zone, and an old file resurfaces. The photographs from a go-fast interdiction. A fingerprint card from Ecuador. You. On day 7, you hear it through the fiberglass, a deep rhythm that does not belong to the sea. Engines above, circling, patient. The pilot looks at you and says nothing at all. Level 8, the boarding. Out in international waters, a vessel with no flag has no country, and a vessel with no country has no protection. American law long ago wrote itself an open door out here. A boarding team crosses from a pursuit boat onto your wet gray hull, boots thudding above your head. A fist hammers the hatch. The pilot's hands are shaking on the valves. Those valves are the cartel's last lawyer. Open the seacocks, flood the hull, and the evidence sinks to the bottom of the Pacific before a single bale can ever be seized. Drug Trafficking Vessel Interdiction Act, 2008, up to 15 years. Congress closed that trick in 2008. Under the Drug Trafficking Vessel Interdiction Act, simply riding in an unflagged semi-submersible is a federal felony all by itself, whether drugs are recovered or not. The Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act goes further. Declare the vessel stateless, and United States law applies to you in the middle of the ocean, thousands of miles from any American shore. Seawater rises around your ankles as the hull settles lower. One by one, gloved hands haul you up through the hatch into blinding daylight, rotor noise, and the smell of clean air. What looks like middle of nowhere is really United States jurisdiction. You are floating in the emptiest place you have ever seen, and legally you might as well be standing on a street corner in Florida. The middle of nowhere belongs to somebody after all. Before the submarine goes under, boarding officers photograph the cargo hold and pull sample kilos out through the hatch. 10 minutes of evidence collection, enough to fund decades of prison time. Then the Pacific takes the boat. Tens of millions of dollars of cocaine spiral down into 4,000 meters of darkness, and the cutter's cameras record every second of it for a courtroom. On the cutter's deck, you are searched, given dry clothes, and shackled by one ankle to a cable run. A corpsman checks your burns from the engine, then the ship simply resumes patrol. Nobody reads you rights that only matter on land. There is no phone call, no lawyer, no court date. There is the sea, in every direction, for exactly as long as they choose. Thousands of miles away in a Tampa office, a federal prosecutor is already stacking your file. Conspiracy, possession with intent to distribute, operating a semi-submersible. Each charge carries its own decade. Level 9. The floating prison. The voyage toward justice is not a flight home. It is weeks spent chained on the deck of a working warship, inside a floating holding cell that American courts almost never see. You live on a foam mat under a tarpaulin on the flight deck, ankle-chained, escorted to a bucket, fed the crew's leftovers. The cutter has other smugglers to catch first. Longest reported detentions. Over 70 days chained at sea. Detainees have reported spending more than 70 days held at sea this way while cutters finish their patrols. Lawyers call it a legal gray zone. You call it the deck. Twice more the alarm sounds and the pursuit boats launch. The cutter fills up with men like you, strangers from different boats, all chained along the same rail, all doing the same silent math. A Coast Guard legal officer photographs your intake daily and logs your meals because defense lawyers will one day ask about these weeks. The paperwork protects them. Nothing out here protects you. Eventually you are transferred, cutter to cutter, north along an invisible conveyor belt of gray hulls. Nobody tells you where it ends. The crews are not unkind. They are simply certain. Mariners taken at sea, over 500 per year in peak years. You are one item in a steady federal flow. In peak years, the United States has pulled hundreds of foreign mariners off the ocean and fed them into its court system this exact way. Land, finally, at a Florida pier. Port Everglades. Marshals and Drug Enforcement Administration agents wait at the gangway with paperwork that has been ready for weeks. Your legs barely remember how to walk. Your first phone call home lands like a stone in still water. Your family thought you had drowned months ago. Now it is a collect call from an American federal detention center. Fingerprints again. But this time they match a file that has been quietly growing for 2 years. A camera flashes. An orange jumpsuit replaces the dry clothes the cutter crew gave you. Standing in the intake line, you finally understand the shape of the thing. At every level you climbed, someone was watching, filing, and waiting. The ladder belonged to them the whole time. Level 10. The courtroom. The federal courthouse in Tampa, Florida, has processed more maritime drug smugglers than any building in America, through a strike force that has been hunting your exact route since the 90s. They call it Operation Panama Express, a task force of prosecutors, Coast Guard officers, and federal agents whose entire working life is convicting the men pulled off these boats. Conviction rate, nearly perfect. Mandatory minimum, 10 years federal prison. The arithmetic is brutal and completely public. A load that size triggers a federal mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison, and the judge cannot legally go below it without your cooperation. A public defender explains American conspiracy law through an interpreter. It does not matter that you never touched United States soil or sold a single gram. The agreement itself is the crime. Then she lays out your real choice. Plead guilty and cooperate for a reduced sentence, or gamble at trial, where juries convict mariners caught inside a cocaine submarine almost every single time. You watch the other crews take their deals ahead of you, one brief hearing after another. The numbers barely move from case to case. This system was not built for suspense. You stand in a rented suit, raise your right hand, and say culpable through the interpreter. It takes 11 minutes to give away a decade. The judge thanks you for your candor. At sentencing, the judge gives you 9 years, near the bottom of the range because you cooperated. 4,000 kilometers south, your daughter learns what a federal prison is from a phone screen. Add up everything the cocaine trade actually paid you across every level of the ladder, then divide it by the years you now owe. You worked for less than minimum wage, plus interest. Your cell is in a low-security federal prison in Georgia, full of men who speak your language and tell the same story with different coastlines. Deportation waits at the end of it. Years from now, you will stand on that same Ecuadorian dock, older, flagged in every database, unhirable on any legal boat. A man in a clean shirt will be talking to someone young, and far beyond the horizon, the white cutters will still be out there, planes above them, analysts behind them, waiting with endless patience at every single level of the ladder you just climbed. That is how the United States Coast Guard hunts you at sea, from the first envelope to the final hearing. Drop the next role or crime you want broken down in the comments below.